Hi there. Hello. I'm just getting all my cameras all set up over here. It's always a challenge trying to determine seeing the cheese board and myself at the same time. So here we are. I'm gonna start recording. So hi, my name is Mary Charlotte. I run a Boston-based um, I would say an Instagram account, a small business, a little org called MaryCharcuterie, based off of my name, Mary Charlotte, MaryCharcuterie. Um, so yeah, and I'm going to walk you through today how to make the ideal cheese board, and I hope you all enjoy. I just want to make sure that the comment section is available. One second. All right. Okay, cool. I think that now everyone should be able to post if they want to. So basically, I'm going to walk people through how to make the ideal cheese board, and with my lessons in what makes a magic cheese board and how it all works. And then I can take some questions at the end as folks get going. So I don't know if people are building along with me or just following along for a lesson. Either way is totally good. Um, oh, good, it's working. Thanks. But yeah, so I just want to make sure that everyone can see and we're good. I'm gonna shift myself. Um, it's funny because it's backwards for me, so it's weird to get used to. Anyway, so to make your perfect cheese board, there are quite a few steps that are involved. So you're going to start with what might be obvious, but maybe not, isn't it's cheese. So I will tell you a little bit about, what cheeses I like, what's ideal, what is maybe not so ideal on a board, and you can go from there. But an important detail to consider is that totally everything cheese board related or taste bud related is totally up to your discretion. So whether you like it or not, no problem. It's totally up to you. So in my world, the perfect cheese board is has at least two types of cheeses on it, and I feel strongly about using a soft cheese and a hard cheese. And then the other thing that's important to consider is a funky cheese and a regular one. So when I say a soft cheese, that's anything that kind of involves a spoon or a knife to like spread it onto a cracker and get it going like that. And then a hard cheese is anything that you can slice up and eat with your hands. So like this one right here, this is a hard one because I would pick it up, but my brie here, which is sort of my main attraction, is something that involves using a knife or a spoon to get to. So that's sort of the way that I distinguish between the two. And then as far as funky and not funky, that's important because not everyone is down to try like a super crazy cheese. And, in my opinion, that's their loss. But some people feel strongly about like nothing funky, nothing smelly, nothing too weird. So, yeah, so like goat cheese, for example, I have goat lined up right down the middle. Goat is something that I love. I think it's amazing, especially this is like a vanilla and honey goat, so it's almost more like a dessert than a regular cheese. So some people love that, some people hate it. So I would not use goat as one of my central features just because it's not for everyone. And then this right here, this is a Toscano, which is a cheddar and Parmesan blend. It's literally my favorite cheese of all time. And actually you can get Toscano cheese in other places, but it's mostly a Trader Joe's regular product. So it's not anything fancy. I literally think that somewhere at Trader Joe's, they just learned to merge the Parmesan and the cheddar together to make this delicious magic. And this one is wine dipped, so it has this like wine crusting on the side, which makes it so good. And I love that one because it's sort of somewhere in the middle between funky, but not too funky, like most people enjoy it. And then brie is just a really easiest crowd pleaser. So I will show you. I have it cut just a little triangle. This way, backwards. So I didn't use a whole brie wheel or anything because depending on how large of a crew you're making this for, you don't necessarily need a full wheel of brie. So a little triangle is good, but brie is usually a crowd pleaser. So yeah, and then with brie, there are a couple different varieties. So you can do just the regular one. You can go for triple cream, which is really intense but really delicious. Or you can do sort of anything a little bit more funky. They've got brie with all sorts of stuff mixed into it. I've had a mushroom infused brie from, again, a Trader Joe's one. Delicious. Can't say enough good things about it. So yeah, you can really mix it up at this stage. So your biggest things, just to recap, are a hard and a soft at minimum. If you want more than that, go for it. And I define soft as anything that needs to be spread. And then a funky and a more plain. So that's up to you exactly what that looks like. But yeah. And then as far as placement on your board, I do like to think through that a little bit too. So basically, if you're thinking about your board here as your centerpiece, think through what you, if you're sitting like across the table from a friend or something, think through where they are sitting and where you're sitting and how easy it is to share. So if I'm sitting here and I've got a friend across the table from me, I don't want all 3 cheeses lined up right here because then I eat them all and my friend has to like get all involved across the table to get some. Or maybe I do want that, but just think through sort of your system. So I like to spread them out, and I like to do sort of fun things with, like with the goat, I did a little cascade of goat cheese sort of down the middle of my board, just to make it more accessible and more fun. So up to you how you like to design it, but I do say, especially if you've got more than 2 cheeses, try to spread them out so that they're sort of readily accessible from different parts of the board. I think those are my biggest things. One thing I would be careful with about cheese is thinking about really funky flavors and spices. Again, I love all things cheese. The like funkier is great, but not everyone really loves like a really smelly cheese. Things in the blue cheese family are, not always crowd pleasers. Sometimes they are, depending on who your friends are, or things that are super, super spicy. So just making sure that you have sort of an acceptable variety. And if you are someone who is dairy sensitive, you can also get like lactose or dairy-free cheese. That's, you could get vegan versions, which are, made from nuts and things like that. But also certain cheeses are easier on the stomach if that's something that is necessary for you. So just a word of advice that cheddar is really good for people with lactose issues. So think that through. Okay, so step 2 on my board, I'm going to move on to this is my second favorite category after cheese, and it's the carbohydrate section. So that could involve crackers, it could be bread, it could be really anything that you want it to be. But basically when I think of the carbohydrate section, I think of it as a vessel for cheese into my mouth. So whatever that looks like for you. And some people like to use vegetables like maybe cucumbers or something for this. But I'm a carbohydrate girl at heart. So I am using a couple of things. These are just pretty plain. They're like more like basic rice crackers. And I like to do a sort of plain one if you have a sort of funky cheese, because if you've got a funky cheese and a funky cracker, it can be a lot. I'm going to move this for now. And same thing with crackers. I like to do sort of like a little cascade. And then I'm also using, these are another Trader Joe's favorite. They're like a gingery cracker, but they're so good with cheese. And same with the idea with cheese. I'm just going to spread them out so that it isn't like one giant clump of crackers in one place and no one can grab them. And the main thing with sort of decorating and design type things is that you just don't necessarily, I mean, again, you can do whatever you want, but you don't necessarily want to go for like just a pile of something on your plate. Like there's a lot of sort of intricately lining things up and placing them in certain spaces. So just think about that as you go. So yeah, now I've got my little cracker pile here. Very important to wash your hands before you do all this because you've got hands in food galore, and obviously that's not ideal. Um, there are a couple things that could be in this category or a different category. Things like maybe pretzels, or if you want like pieces of bread to make, like take a baguette and slice it up so you can do like meat, cheese, and bread together. Those are all good options too. Pretzels are something that I put in my extra category at the very end, so we'll get there. But basically, at this point, you're just thinking through what am I putting my cheese and my meat and whatever else on. So that's what you're going to think about. After crackers is the category of like spreads and dips. And this one is really about, I think, people's taste buds because everyone feels pretty differently about this. I'm going to use honey today. You guys already saw this one here. But you could also use jam. Sometimes I use spicy honey. That's really my favorite. Some people love mustard. I am not someone who loves mustard, so I can't help you with that one. But like, some spicier mustards are sometimes popular with cheeses. But yeah, so I've got honey. Another tip for you about using any sort of jam or honey or anything in that family is that if you're making a board for either just you or just you and whoever you live with or a smaller group, oftentimes you're going to use less than what you might think. At least that's been my experience so far. So if you have like a little honey, or sometimes jams come in things that are small enough that they're pretty easy to, you could just think, oh, I'm just going to put the whole jam on here. But when you really think about exactly what you're going to eat and what you want to use that day, I don't always like to do things that are, I don't like to put the whole thing on there. So, I mean, I've got little jars like this because I make a ton of cheese and charcuterie boards. I realize that normal people don't have a ton of stuff like that just sitting around their house. But if you're using like a super thick jam, that can even just go right on the board in like a little blob. Honey, obviously you don't want to do that because that would just be a sticky mess. But using less than sort of what you anticipate is sometimes helpful because if you put the whole thing out, that ends up being kind of wasteful toward the end, and you don't always want to reuse it if a bunch of people have been eating from it. Again, if it's just you in your house, put the whole thing of honey right on there and live your life. But my tip is that for things in the condiment section, you are going to end up using less than what you think you're going to use. So even this is probably a dramatic amount of honey for a cheese board for one or two people. But I just wanted everyone to be able to actually see it. So think that through. And then the other thing about sort of placement on the board is, again, just making sure that it's in a space on the board that's pretty accessible. So this little guy here is going to go right here between my crackers and my cheese, so that I sort of like it to look like a bit of a centerpiece. Another thing about cheese boarding sort of styling that's relevant here is my style is that I like things to look pretty compact and like uniform. So if you're looking at the board, you're not seeing a ton of blank space. Obviously, not everyone's like that. Some people don't like their foods to touch, and that's fine. But if you're building a board, I do sort of like to think, I mean, this is a pretty large board here, and I'm probably not going to fill up these edges here. So I'm thinking about, okay, here's my middle, and we're going to build out. So that's just, a word of advice about if you want it to look cute, looking for less blank space is usually pretty helpful. So yeah, and then as far as your condiment of choice, honey is usually my go-to, but jams are quite popular. And the only thing that I would consider about jam is thinking about if we're going to get to the fruit section later, which I'll talk about. Maybe just trying to determine that your jam and your fruit are not the same. So like I'm using cherries in a few minutes, and I probably would not want also a cherry jam. And that's just so that you get, the more flavors, the better, and you can mix it up. Um, yeah, so I think that's about it for the honey and jam category. You can let me know, and I take some questions toward the end if you have any questions or any favorites that you love. I know some people that I've met in my cheese boarding experiences have jam and honey brands that they really love. So those are always fun for me to hear about. My next section is meat, and this is actually, I know not everyone eats meat, so if you don't, no problem. Doesn't need to be a part of it. But this is the last sort of required section that I think is what makes up a perfect cheese board. And then after that, everything else is sort of like an extra or a bonus ingredient. So for meat, if you're someone who eats meat, anything in the sort of salted meat category would fit in here. So I usually use salami or prosciutto. Personally, those are my favorites. But people use, really anything. I've seen turkey on boards before if people don't like pork. I've seen beef jerky sometimes. So, you can be sort of flexible about it. But there are a couple of different methods about meat that I like to share. So today I'm using prosciutto, and I like to roll them up into these little prosciutto rolls, and I'll show you how exactly I'll sort of undo it. I did them ahead of time because they sometimes take me a couple minutes, and I wasn't sure that everyone wanted to sit here and watch me roll up prosciutto, so I thought I'd prepare. So you take a piece that's about this big, and this is like, if you got prosciutto at the grocery store, this is probably 1/4 of a piece from the package. And then I just take it about this size and roll it. So it just gets rolled up like that. And I've seen, you can really do anything that you want, but the general idea or the rule of thumb is that you want everything on your board to more or less be finger food. So if you're thinking through like, okay, I'm going to serve this to my friends or my family or myself while I watch Netflix, how am I going to pick it all up? Like, I don't want just like a pile of meat in the middle of my board. I want to be able to do it sort of easily, put it on a cracker, keep going. Sometimes when I do make a little bite though, I will take my cheese, take my cracker, and then I'll unroll the prosciutto and add some honey or some jam. That's just a preference. You can do whatever you want. But again, I like to kind of like line these up in a fun way. I did these earlier, so I've got the space now, and you'll be able to see in a second. But doing any kind of like line down the middle is often popular on your cheese board of choice. So yeah. You can also use multiple meats if you're really someone who loves meat or you're serving to a group of people who love meat. You could do prosciutto and salami. You could do really anything that you want. But so now I've got my little river of prosciutto here, working around my goat cheese river so that you can really have whatever makes you happy. Yeah, so the only other things that I would suggest regarding meat are different flavors go with different things pretty nicely. So prosciutto is a little bit more bland than something like a salami, and I love like a good cracked pepper salami or something like that. But that's definitely super flavorful and intense. So I would just think through exactly what flavor combos you're going for. So like I love my ideal bite that I could make right now with this little plate is I could take this cracker, I could take some goat cheese, and I could take a little prosciutto roll, and then I don't have my little honey dipper with me, but I could put some honey on there, and that would be a perfect bite. So just thinking through, if you have like a really spicy pepper jack, for example, you maybe don't want also salami and also like a super sweet jam on top of that. Although now that I'm saying that, that doesn't sound so bad. But basically, think through flavor combos and what's going to taste good together. Yeah, so prosciutto is sort of the more mild option, just a tip. So now you are in the category of fruits, vegetables, and their friends. And this could be fresh fruit, dried fruit, or any kind of veggie. So whatever you like. Um, I often like to mix things up with this category a lot just because there are so many options and they're all very delicious. So, but I do have some strong opinions about things that don't work so well on boards. So today I'm going to use cherries, and I love cherries in general. I love them with cheese. I just think that they're so delicious. And because cherries are sort of a standalone fruit, they're just going to go on their own over here. Where if I had something that was more like a berry, I'll show you my cherries, that needed sort of its own space to be, like maybe raspberries or something, those might go in a little bowl or a ramekin just so they don't get all over the place. But cherries obviously are something that are freestanding. Other popular things for boards sometimes are like chopped up cucumbers. You could do a little cucumber river like I did my goat cheese. You could do cherry tomatoes. Those are pretty popular with like mozzarella and basil, something like that. The one thing that I have strong opinions about, and this is my own personal thing. If you want to put one on your cheese board, I don't care. But I do think that I always think it feels silly to me when I see cheese boards with like a full piece of fruit, so like an apple or an orange or something. And I know that it looks cute and that's the idea, but like no one is ever going to show up at a dinner party or like book club or something and pick up an apple off the cheese board and eat it when everyone else is sitting there. So if you're going to do something like that, I would slice up the apple and put slices out so that people can have their bites with it, but I just wouldn't do a whole fruit. And same goes for like an orange. I've seen that a lot, I think just because they look cute and they add a pop of color, which is great. But I would just peel the orange and put the pieces out so that people can actually pick them up, because otherwise it's purely aesthetically pleasing but doesn't actually do anything for eating. And eating is the most important, in my humble opinion. So again, take my advice or don't, but that's how I feel about fruit on boards. I'm also going to add, these are another Trader Joe's goodie that are just so delish. These are a chili lime spiced dried mango, and they're so good, but they're spicy. And I broke them up into pieces because they do come in kind of like larger, not so bite-sized things. And to follow my own advice, everything needs to be bite-sized and attainable. And they're just going to go right there next to my brie. Dried fruits are very popular on cheese boards. I think mostly because they're delicious, but they also can be a little bit easier. Like they don't have to be super freshly chopped up like other fruits do, and they just go really nicely with cheeses. So I really encourage a good dried fruit situation. Now we are in the final category of Cheeseboarding 101 with MaryCharcuterie, which is fun. So this is my miscellaneous category, and this is where I both add on any last minute things, but also get a little bit obsessive about the design of it all. So a few options for extras. This is where I would add in anything like salty and delicious, like pretzels or nuts, although be careful with allergies. I also always like to add something super sweet. So whether that's candy or like fruity candy or chocolate or little cookies or anything like that, because I just always feel like I love salty and sweet together. So cheese and chocolate or chocolate with pretzels or anything like that is such a good combination in my book. So I'm going to start by adding some pretzels. And this is what I was saying earlier. Pretzels can really be in your carbohydrate section, or they can be an extra at the end, depending on if you think of a pretzel as your cheese vessel or just a little snack to add in. So I've got a lot of pretzels here. I think I'm going to put them in 2 different locations, and there's nothing wrong with that either. So I've got pretzels up here in my very top corner. If you can see. And then I'm going to put them down in this corner next to my cherries too. Other things that can be sort of miscellaneous and at the end. People feel, again, sort of mixed on olives on cheese boards. Personally, I'm not an olive girl, but I learned through posting enough anti-olive content on my Instagram account that that was an unpopular opinion. So I apologize to the olive lovers of the world. But they're just not for me. And I do find that they sort of get all over everything. So my only advice, if you are someone who's going to make an olivey cheese board, just put them in a little bowl or something so that the olive juices don't get all over the place. And same goes for pickles. Pickles are the same. I like them. They taste good, but they infiltrate the rest of the board. So try to keep them sort of on their own. And then I'm just going to add on my sweets. So these are strawberry flavored Twizzler pieces. These are also a Trader Joe's thing. If you're sensing a theme, it's because I almost always get my cheese board supplies from Trader Joe's. You just really can't go wrong. It's sort of, you know, nice and budget friendly, which I appreciate. And, oh, this way. Also, they just have everything is like, it looks like it's especially made for a cheese board making party in there. Like everything's cute and individually packaged and amazing. So that's it's always my go-to. And then I just got a little bit of chocolate. And this is for people who have such a sweet tooth like me and need chocolate mixed in with literally everything. So I just, you know, cut it up so it's in pieces. And I'm going to fill in my last little gap right there. There we go. So at this point, my cheese board is complete. I will pick it up and spin it so you all can see the whole thing. I don't want to spin it too fast because I will drop it on the floor. There, you can see it from the other side too. So yeah, the final sort of styling tips that I have are, again, looking at it from the top and thinking like, okay, do I have too much of one thing in one position or not enough over here? So I might spread out my little prosciutto a bit, just make some room. I like to fill in the gaps just because that's my personal preference on style, but it is up to you. I will maybe actually move a couple of these crackers because I'm worried they're going to fall off the edge. And I'll make some room over in this corner so that you can get crackers everywhere. And then, yeah, that is kind of the gist. Some people say for cheeses, if they prefer their cheese room temperature or easy to slice, people prefer that they take cheese out like an hour before you serve it. I think that advice is true, but climate dependent, because here, at least in Brighton where I am, and I think where most of you are based who follow along with this, something like a brie right here, it's not even that hot today and it's already kind of melty. So just thinking through exactly what sort of timeline you're looking at. Do you have air conditioning? Do you like your cheese to be a little softer and runnier, or do you prefer it fresh out of the fridge? So think through those things. Especially with fruit, make sure that it doesn't brown too quickly, like if you're doing apples or something like that. And crackers get stale, literally you blink and a cracker is stale. So just think that through before you start taking things out of the fridge and getting ready. I just always recommend, if you're bringing a cheese board to an event or having friends over or something, make it as close to the actual event as possible, because things kind of expire and go bad quickly. That being said, you can leave it out at a party for a few hours and stuff, but just the fresher the better. Things are more delicious that way. So I do have a couple of minutes to take any questions that have risen. So if you want to just type them into this chat here, I will monitor it. And I think Do you have a recommended portion per person that guides your plate size and cheese amounts? Um, Not specifically like in ounces of cheese or anything. The boards that I make when I am selling them in a more normal lifestyle, I ask how many people are going to be there, and I am able to plan accordingly. Um, I think it depends if you are looking for it to be like a real meal for a group of people or um, just a snack. So something like this, and this one looks sort of large here on camera right now, but I think this actually would only serve maybe 2 or 3 people because there isn't a ton of cheese. It's much more like filler things like crackers and stuff like that. But if you have like a full brie that comes in wheel form or something like that, that could usually feed 3 or 4 people on its own. So you could build up from there. And then recommendations for carb or cracker items that don't contain wheat. Um, so if you're looking for something that is like a gluten-free item, any sort of rice-based cracker is awesome. I will need to get, I don't actually know the name of the brand. It might be something like Almond Thins, but they have them at most grocery stores and they have them in all forms. Like I really like the cheddar ones and they're like a rice-based cracker. There must be something almondy about them because that's why they're called that. And those are super good and really, really good with cheese. I actually sometimes I like to do rice crackers, even though I'm not someone who is gluten free or anything, but they're just usually crispier and go really well with softer cheeses. I think they're a little bit more supportive than crackers that kind of flake off. So, yeah, happy to take any other questions that are popping up too. I will tell you that a board like this, although it looks cute and it's sort of fun and festive and sort of the more traditional cutting board, is kind of challenging to move. So if my tip is that if I'm having friends over or something, I'll make my cheese board on a board like this. But if I have to go somewhere, I always try. I have a couple of boards that have edges, like sides, and you can pick them up, and those are a game changer for being mobile with cheese. And I don't know if some of you saw my video also here on this page about how to pack the perfect picnic, and that's totally relevant. So making things portable is like part of the journey, but if you're trying to do a picnic, you're definitely going to want something with sides. And my other sort of trick is that if you have a pie plate, so any like a bottom and it has edges up the side, it actually makes a very cute cheese board. So my recommendation is if you're doing a smaller one and it needs to be mobile, use a pie plate if you have one because the sides are built in. And then if you're going anywhere, you can just put some like saran wrap or tinfoil over the top and it's easy to go. But this one, for example, it would be really hard to take it anywhere. I have to like wrap it a million times. And yeah. Are there any other questions that folks have? Would love to hear about your cheese preferences. I'm totally gonna eat this like entire thing as soon as I hang up here. It's tempting me right now. I'm reading this question. Yeah, so levels, I think you mean, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like having it not be super flat, like having, I think some people do little stands or something like that. I do like that visually, and I think honestly, I don't do anything that intense like with stands, but I do think if you have items that sort of naturally are different in size, like how my honey jar here stands up because it's taller than everything else, I do like the way that that looks and it's not super unnecessary. So um, that's why I do try to mix in like little bowls, ramekins, honey jars, stuff like that, because not only is it just easier to have things sort of separated out like that. I like the way that it looks with different levels and keeping things flat. And that's another reason for like cutting up cheeses, like, oh, you can't see that one now, like cutting up cheeses like this one, because then it's flat on there, and other cheeses that you could put on here in a full piece are just easier. And yeah, that's another tip, sort of unrelated to the levels thing, but I do, if I'm doing a hard cheese that is going to taste just as good, whether it's chopped or not, I like to chop it up for people just because I think, I imagine my part of my love for cheese boarding came from, I'm in a book club with a group of girlfriends, and I'm always like, used to make cheese boards for book club a lot, and then it sort of evolved, but um, I'd be like trying to have a conversation and like dealing with the cheese knife and making sure I had the honey and the cracker and all of that. So it's just easier if that piece is already done for you. So I like to have it sort of pre-chopped like this guy. Obviously something like a brie is just much harder, and that is what it is. But anything that makes it easy to eat is definitely the move, I think. And then, yeah, for a surprise item, I think my favorite thing that is not, I don't know if it's super shocking, but it's my favorite thing, and a lot of people don't have it, is spicy honey. My favorite is Mike's Hot Honey. It's just the brand, but it's so good, and it's so good with cheese that I always like to tell people about that. Um, and then also mixing in chocolate. I know that that's not super traditional, but like I'm someone who is constantly going back and forth between salty and sweet. Like if I have something sweet, I want salty, and vice versa. So if if you have chocolate or something on a board, someone might not realize that they want that, but then they'll finish their bite of cheese and cracker or whatever, and realize that they want something sweet too. So that's been pretty successful for me. I know, it's good. Okay, well, this has been really fun. I have really loved cheese boarding for you all. Um, Thanks for listening to me ramble about the different types of cheese and my styling and all that. Again, my Instagram account is MaryCharcuterie, and that's where I put everything sort of um, cheese board based and everything like that. I would love to hear from anyone after this. If any questions pop up that you're like, oh, I meant to ask her, I'm always happy to respond. So just send me a message. And yeah, I hope everyone has a great evening and good luck on your future cheese board adventures. If you ever make one after this class, definitely tag me in it so I can see your hard work. All right, I'm going to end this here, but definitely reach out if you have any questions. Have a good night.